Bring in Paul Sankey from Sankey Research, talk about the future for the energy complex. Paul, it's great to see you. I did notice Goldman today. Uncertainty remains regarding potential supply disruptions. We see clear risk of 125. Have your numbers gone up?
I think we've been surprised by some of the market reaction today. It's actually been quite thematic. I mean, you've seen solar stocks and wind stocks going up a ton. But it's, of course, very bad news for Europe. The key thing in real terms, because there's no interruption in energy supply right now from Russia, is the Nord Stream 2, which wasn't delivering anyway, but it's now going to be much further delayed. And so what we're seeing is definitely some tightness and concern around oil and particularly diesel and distillate, which really are dependent on low natural gas prices to make a lot of. And so it's been an interesting day, to say the least, in terms of how the market's reacted so thematically.
Indeed. There's been a lot of discussion today about going back years and looking at what happened to European production and this frog in a pot of water, increasing reliance on Russia for energy. Was there an off-ramp, do you think, somewhere in the years past where they could have made a different decision that would make today's dynamic different?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, European energy policy has been a disaster. You've decapitalized the fossil fuel industry way too quickly, while building a lot of wind and solar, obviously, particularly wind. The wind is a positive. We like wind, but you can't just take money out of, for example, shutting down all your nuclear plants and not expect to end up very, very dependent on natural gas. So the policy has been a disaster. By the way, Carl, you just asked me if I changed any of my numbers. No, we said we've gone into an $80 to $120 range for oil here. And this event is a short-term shock, hopefully, one that won't upset the global economy and ruin, what strength and demand that we're seeing here for oil, which has been very strong.
How do you define short-term, Paul?
Short-term, or intraday trading, for example, but no, in this case, I think, it's a question of how long this military action goes on, obviously, and that's clearly very uncertain. But, for us, the longest term investors we have are 3 to 5 years, and the shortest term are 3 to 5 minutes. So it's a vague area, but I would say that there was an expectation that this Ukraine situation would go on for weeks. I think that this action has surprised and shocked everyone, and it may actually, strangely enough, resolve the issue, sooner rather than us living with uncertainty. We've actually, in some ways, based on the way the markets rallied, kind of answered some questions here. As regards, what the market hates most, which is uncertainty.
So you believe that the market has largely priced in the geopolitical implications on the energy market. What do you think is the likelihood that alternative energy supplies become available to Europe?
Well, I mean, they've already overcapitalized wind, as I mentioned, and they need natural gas. The good news for the U.S. is that we're about to become the largest natural gas exporter in the world. And I was highlighting this morning that we're also much, much less dependent on imported oil. 10 years ago, we were importing net over 10 million barrels a day of oil, believe it or not, half our consumption. Now that's more like 1 million barrels a day, and it could be less if we really needed it to be. So that's one of the reasons why money is flying into the U.S., because we're actually relatively unaffected by what happens in the Ukraine. As you know, the problem is really for Europe. And what you've got here is environmentalists who oppose everything. We call them banana, build absolutely nothing, absolutely nowhere. And so as you take money out of fossil fuels, you're really unable to add things like transmission lines in Germany that you need to connect the wind power to the south, where the demand, particularly the nuclear power, was. So it doesn't make sense. It's what we call platitudes over physics. And, we need to get more baseload power. And that's going to have to be from natural gas if you're not going to do nuclear.